She screamed, "I didn't do this!" as cold steel handcuffs crushed her wrists, children from the hospital where she worked as a nurse watching in horror from car windows. $300,000 stolen. That's what they said she took from the family business she'd helped build for 8 years. Her world crumbled in 60 seconds as neighbors she'd known for years whispered and pointed. The man she'd loved since college, the one who promised to protect her forever, stood sobbing as police dragged his wife away. He looked completely broken, destroyed by her alleged betrayal. But what if I told you the real thief was holding her wedding ring while she got arrested? Welcome to True Crime Journal HQ. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily update on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to subscribe. Natalia Brennan was born in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above her parents' corner grocery store in rural Ohio. Her mother Maria cleaned offices at night, while her father Carlos worked double shifts at the local factory, both determined to give their daughter opportunities they never had. From age 7, Natalia would help elderly customers carry their groceries, translate for non-English speakers, and bandage scraped knees when kids fell outside the store. Teachers noticed something special about her. While other students rushed through assignments, Natalia stayed after school tutoring struggling classmates for free. She volunteered at the local animal shelter every weekend, nursing injured strays back to health. Her bedroom walls were covered with acceptance letters to nursing programs and photos of sick children she'd read about in magazines, dreaming of the day she could help them heal. At 18, she earned a full scholarship to State University, where she met Vincent Brennan during freshman orientation. He was charming, ambitious, and came from the kind of established family she'd only seen in movies. Vincent's grandfather had built a successful auto parts business, and Vincent seemed destined to inherit both wealth and respect. Their first date lasted 6 hours. They talked about everything from her dreams of pediatric nursing to his plans for expanding the family business. For a girl who'd grown up counting pennies, Vincent represented security and genuine love. After graduation, Natalia landed her dream job at Riverside Falls Children's Hospital. Parents would specifically request her for their scared, crying children because she had this gift. She could calm a screaming toddler with just her voice and make a terrified teenager laugh during their worst moments. Colleagues called her the baby whisperer, and she'd stay late without extra pay just to read bedtime stories to kids whose parents couldn't visit. Vincent proposed on their 4th anniversary with a ring that cost more than her parents made in 6 months. Their wedding was everything Natalia had dreamed of: 300 guests, a reception at the country club, and her parents crying tears of joy as they watched their daughter marry into one of the town's most respected families. The local newspaper featured them as Riverside Falls' perfect couple, complete with photos of their honeymoon in Italy. For 8 years, they seemed unbreakable. Vincent took over daily operations of Brennan Auto Parts, while Natalia worked her way up to head pediatric nurse. They hosted charity fundraisers in their beautiful colonial home, volunteered at food banks together, and Natalia's childhood best friend, Victoria Lane, became like a sister to Vincent too. Every Sunday, they'd have dinner with Vincent's parents, and every holiday was spent surrounded by family who adored them both. Victoria would joke that she was jealous of how perfect their relationship was. They never fought, never seemed stressed about money, and Vincent would surprise Natalia with flowers just because it was Tuesday. Vincent's leadership transformed Brennan Auto Parts into the region's most successful supplier, landing contracts with major manufacturers across 3 states. Their social media showed exotic vacations, anniversary dinners at 5-star restaurants, and Vincent's arms wrapped around Natalia at charity galas, where they were always the golden couple everyone admired. Neighbors in their upscale neighborhood would wave every morning as Vincent kissed Natalia goodbye before she left for her hospital shifts. Victoria lived just 2 blocks away, and the 3 of them were inseparable: game nights, double dates, weekend trips to Vincent's family cabin. Everyone who knew them said they'd never seen a marriage so solid, so built on genuine friendship and mutual respect. Have you ever thought you knew someone completely? Have you ever looked at a couple and thought, that's what love looks like? Thousands of people thought they knew Natalia too, right up until the moment she was in handcuffs. If you don't subscribe, ask yourself, Would anyone warn you before it's too late? But behind closed doors, Vincent was living a double life that would destroy everything. While Natalia saved lives at the children's hospital, Vincent was destroying his own in basement poker rooms across the city. It started innocently, a few hands with business associates after closing deals. But soon Vincent was driving 40 minutes to underground games in abandoned warehouses, betting amounts that would have horrified his wife and parents. The rush of winning became his drug. When he lost, he'd tell himself the next hand would fix everything. Online betting sites knew his credit card by heart. Sports games, horse races, international soccer matches he knew nothing about. Vincent would place bets during board meetings, on his phone while Natalia slept beside him, even from the hospital parking lot while visiting sick employees. 2 years of this madness cost him $300,000. Money that should have been in their retirement accounts, in Natalia's college fund for the children they planned to have, in emergency savings for the business. Instead, it vanished into the digital accounts of offshore gambling sites and the pockets of men who didn't care that Vincent Brennan was destroying his family's legacy. The worst part? Vincent was good at hiding it. He'd come home from losing $15,000 in a single night and kiss Natalia like nothing happened. He'd take her out for expensive dinners paid for with money stolen from his own father's company, smiling while she thanked him for being such a loving husband. Desperate times demanded desperate measures. Vincent created employees who existed only on paper, phantom workers with fake social security numbers who received real paychecks that went straight into Vincent's gambling accounts. He manufactured invoices for parts that were never ordered, payments to vendors that never delivered anything, and maintenance contracts for services that never happened. The family business became his personal casino bankroll. Every month, Vincent would transfer funds meant for legitimate expenses into his secret accounts. He manipulated the accounting software his father had trusted him to manage, creating false records that showed healthy profits while the company bled money into Vincent's addiction. His father, Richard, enjoying retirement after 40 years of building the business, would call occasionally to check on things. Vincent assured him everything was running smoothly, profits were up, and the company's future looked bright. Richard would beam with pride, telling neighbors how his son was even more successful than he'd been. But Richard had devastating news during a family dinner in March. He missed the excitement of business ownership and wanted to return from retirement to help expand operations. He'd come back in 6 months to review all financial records and help Vincent take the company national. Vincent smiled and said how excited he was to work alongside his father again. Inside, his world was collapsing. Richard would discover the missing money within hours of examining the books. Vincent stared at Natalia sleeping peacefully beside him, knowing he was about to destroy the only person who'd ever truly loved him. But prison terrified him more than guilt. He needed a scapegoat, someone with access to the business finances, someone trusted enough that their betrayal would shock everyone, someone whose downfall would distract from any deeper investigation. Natalia was perfect. She had keys to the office, knew the computer passwords, and everyone loved her too much to suspect her until the evidence became overwhelming. Vincent began studying his wife like a predator studies prey. Her work schedule, her hospital computer access, her daily routines. What would you do if someone you loved was planning your destruction? If you think you'd see the signs, you wouldn't. That's the point. Hit subscribe now, or head to the comments and explain why you're okay being blindsided like Natalia. What Vincent did next would make you question if you really know the person sleeping beside you. Vincent became a master forger overnight. While Natalia worked 12-hour shifts saving children's lives, her husband sat in their home office practicing her signature on withdrawal slips and transfer forms. He studied the loops in her handwriting, the way she dotted her I's, the pressure she applied when signing important documents. 27 practice sheets later, he could replicate her name perfectly. The fake email accounts came next. Vincent created nataliabrennan.nurse@igmail.com and nbrennan.healthcareyahoo.com, addresses that looked legitimate enough to fool bank representatives and business partners. He used these accounts to authorize wire transfers, confirm transactions, and establish communication threads that would later appear to prove Natalia's involvement in the theft. Every Tuesday and Thursday, when Natalia worked night shifts at Riverside Falls Children's Hospital, Vincent would slip into the garage and plant evidence in her Honda Civic. Rolls of $20 bills appeared in her glove compartment, tucked behind her registration papers. More cash materialized in the side pockets of her nurse's bag, carefully wrapped in hospital tissue so it looked like tips from grateful families. At the hospital, Vincent had memorized Natalia's locker combination from watching her enter it hundreds of times during his surprise lunch visits. During her breaks, when she was comforting a crying child 3 floors away, he'd slip unmarked envelopes containing business documents and bank statements into her locker. To any investigator, it would appear Natalia was hiding evidence of her crimes at work. The digital manipulation required more sophistication. Vincent installed remote access software on Natalia's laptop while she slept, allowing him to control her computer from his phone. He'd wait until she was at work, then log into banking sites using her saved passwords, creating transaction histories that showed her accessing accounts during her night shifts. Every click, every download, every financial document viewed would bear her IP address and login credentials. Vincent even hacked into the hospital's computer system using Natalia's employee credentials, accessing patient billing information and creating fake invoices for medical equipment that was never purchased. To investigators, it would appear she was using her hospital access to facilitate money laundering operations. The casino loyalty cards were Vincent's masterpiece of deception. He visited 6 different gambling establishments across 3 counties, signing up for membership programs using Natalia's name and personal information. Each card showed activity dates that corresponded perfectly with her work schedule. Tuesday poker tournaments, Thursday slot machine sessions, weekend blackjack games. Vincent even used her credit card to make small gambling transactions, ensuring her financial records would show a pattern of betting behavior. Sports betting slips appeared in her purse, her car console, and even tucked inside her nursing manuals. Vincent printed these at home using online templates, backdating them to create months of fake gambling history. He scattered lottery scratchers in her desk drawers, some winning small amounts to suggest she was chasing bigger payouts. The most devastating plant was a handwritten journal Vincent created in her writing style. The journal detailed fictional gambling sessions, her supposed addiction to the rush of winning, and her growing desperation as losses mounted. Entries described stealing money from the family business to cover debts, written in Natalia's careful handwriting that Vincent had spent weeks perfecting. He even created a fake recovery group attendance card, suggesting Natalia had tried to quit gambling but failed. The card bore the signature of a counselor who didn't exist, at a facility Vincent had researched but never visited. Every detail supported the narrative that his wife had a secret gambling addiction she was desperately trying to hide. Vincent's performance as the concerned husband deserved awards. When bank representatives called about unusual account activity, his voice cracked with just the right amount of confusion and pain. "I can't believe Natalia would do this to our family," he'd whisper, perfectly timed pauses suggesting a man struggling to accept his wife's betrayal. He shared carefully edited screenshots with friends and family, text messages that appeared to show Natalia asking for money, emails discussing financial problems that never existed, and photos of the planted evidence discovered in her belongings. Each revelation was strategically timed to build maximum impact while maintaining his image as the heartbroken victim. The digital trail led investigators exactly where Vincent intended. Her laptop showed she'd researched offshore banking, visited gambling websites during work hours, and downloaded financial software used for money laundering. Her phone's location data placed her at casinos she'd never visited, thanks to Vincent carrying her device during his own gambling trips. Friends began noticing changes in Natalia's behavior, changes Vincent had specifically planted in their minds through casual conversations. "She's been so secretive lately," he'd mentioned to Victoria. "She gets defensive when I ask about our finances." Every seed of doubt was carefully planted weeks before the evidence would be discovered. One day you're surrounded by friends. The next day, you're the villain in everyone's story. If you're not subscribed, you'll never see it coming. Prove you're smarter. Subscribe now. Natalia noticed the missing money first. Small amounts from their joint checking account that Vincent claimed were automatic transfers. When she questioned bank statements showing transactions she didn't recognize, Vincent would hold her gently and suggest she was working too many double shifts, that the stress was affecting her memory. She tried discussing her concerns during their quiet Sunday morning breakfasts, but Vincent had become a master manipulator. "Maybe we should talk to someone about your anxiety," he'd suggest softly, making her doubt her own perceptions. "You've been forgetting things lately. Last week you couldn't remember where you put your car keys." The isolation crept in slowly. Colleagues at the hospital began whispering when she passed, their conversations stopping abruptly when they saw her approaching. Victoria started cancelling their weekly dinner plans, claiming she was too busy with work. Even her parents seemed distant during phone calls, asking careful questions about her marriage and finances. "Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do?" But the worst betrayal was yet to come. Detective Maria Santos had seen many arrests in her 15-year career, but nothing prepared her for what happened at Riverside Falls Children's Hospital on that Tuesday morning. Natalia was in the middle of administering medication to a 7-year-old cancer patient when 3 officers walked into the pediatric ward, their heavy boots echoing against the polished floors. "Natalia Brennan, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering," Detective Santos announced, her voice cutting through the usual hospital sounds of beeping machines and quiet conversations. Parents clutched their children closer as nurses froze in doorways, watching their beloved colleague's world collapse. The handcuffs clicked shut around Natalia's wrists as she stood there in her pink scrubs decorated with cartoon animals, the same scrubs she'd worn while comforting countless frightened children. Her face showed pure bewilderment, not the guilt or resignation officers typically saw during white-collar arrests. "There's been a mistake," she kept repeating, her voice cracking as she looked desperately at her colleagues for support that never came. Vincent arrived 20 minutes later, summoned by a frantic call from the hospital administrator. His performance was flawless, tears streaming down his face as he watched his wife being led away in handcuffs. He embraced Dr. Patterson, Natalia's supervisor, sobbing about how he never saw the signs and how he felt completely betrayed by the woman he loved. Every camera phone in the hospital lobby captured his anguish, footage that would later appear on local news broadcasts. Imagine your whole life collapsing in front of everyone you know, and no one believing you. Subscribe now, or comment why you wouldn't, knowing how easily this could be you. The evidence against Natalia was overwhelming and perfectly constructed. Detective Santos had investigated financial crimes for over a decade, but she'd never seen such a comprehensive paper trail leading to a single suspect. Bank records showed Natalia's signature on dozens of fraudulent documents. Security footage from her laptop showed her accessing business accounts during her night shifts at the hospital. Her phone's GPS data placed her at casinos across 3 counties. Vincent's testimony to investigators was devastating in its detail and emotion. He described finding gambling receipts in her purse, confronting her about mysterious cash deposits, and watching his wife become increasingly secretive and defensive. "She'd disappear for hours on her days off," he told Detective Santos, his voice breaking. "When I'd ask where she'd been, she'd get angry and accuse me of not trusting her." He painted a picture of a woman consumed by gambling addiction, who exploited her position in his family's business to feed her compulsion. Vincent showed investigators text messages where Natalia supposedly discussed financial problems, emails authorizing suspicious transfers, and photos of cash hidden in their home, all evidence he had meticulously planted over 3 months. The prosecution built their case around Natalia's unique access to the family business. As Vincent's wife, she had keys to the office, knew all the computer passwords, and was trusted completely by Vincent's father, Richard. They argued she used this intimate knowledge to create the phantom employees, forge the invoices, and redirect funds to personal gambling accounts. Federal prosecutor Jennifer Walsh called it a betrayal of the deepest trust, a woman who exploited her husband's love and her father-in-law's confidence to steal $300,000 from the family business that welcomed her with open arms. The narrative was compelling, The evidence was overwhelming, and Natalia's genuine confusion only made her appear more manipulative. Natalia's court-appointed attorney, David Reeves, faced an impossible task. Every piece of evidence pointed to his client's guilt. Bank statements bore her signature, computer logs showed her accessing accounts, and even her husband testified against her with heartbreaking conviction. During cross-examination, Natalia's desperation was palpable. "I never signed those documents," she insisted, her voice rising as Reeves showed her evidence of her supposed crimes. "I don't even know what half of these accounts are." Her genuine bewilderment made her appear rehearsed to the jury, as if she was performing innocence rather than experiencing it. Vincent's testimony was masterful theater. He took the witness stand wearing the same navy suit he'd worn to their wedding anniversary dinner just months before. His voice cracked at perfectly timed moments as he described discovering his wife's alleged betrayal. "I loved her unconditionally," he whispered to the packed courtroom. "I trusted her with my family's legacy, and she destroyed everything we built together." When pressed by the defense about his own gambling habits, Vincent admitted to occasional poker games, but claimed he'd always been honest about his recreational betting. "Maybe $50 on a weekend game with friends," he said, shrugging sadly. "Nothing like what Natalia was doing. The amounts she stole. It would take me decades to lose that much money." Reeves tried desperately to poke holes in the prosecution's case, but every question only made the evidence appear stronger. When he asked about the timing of transactions, prosecutors showed how they perfectly aligned with Natalia's work schedule. When he questioned the handwriting analysis, 3 experts confirmed the signatures were authentic. When he suggested someone else might have had access to her accounts, the prosecution demonstrated that only Natalia knew all the necessary passwords and security questions. The community's reaction was swift and brutal. Riverside Falls had embraced Natalia as the perfect neighbor, the nurse who organized Christmas toy drives and volunteered at every charity event. Local newspapers ran headlines like "Trusted Nurse Steals from Family Business" and "Perfect Marriage Hides Dark Secret." Former patients' families felt betrayed, wondering if the woman who'd cared for their children was capable of such calculated deception. How do you prove innocence when everything points to your guilt? The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Natalia's legs gave out as the foreman read the verdict, her court-appointed attorney catching her arm as she swayed forward. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in federal prison, calling her crimes a profound violation of trust that strikes at the heart of family loyalty. As bailiffs led her away in shackles, Natalia turned for one last look at the gallery. Vincent sat in the front row, tears streaming down his face as he watched his wife being taken to prison for crimes he had committed. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and something flickered across his expression. Not grief, but relief. "I didn't do this," Natalia called out as the courtroom doors closed behind her. "Vincent, please tell them the truth. You know I would never—" Her voice was cut off by the heavy wooden doors that separated her from the life she'd never see again. "Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you are enjoying this content, drop a comment with 'I'm still here.' Let's see who is still watching." Victoria Lane had been Natalia's best friend since childhood, the sister she'd never had, the maid of honor at her wedding. But Vincent's manipulation of Victoria began during the investigation, as he shared his pain and confusion about discovering his wife's supposed crimes. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," Vincent would tell Victoria during their long conversations about Natalia's arrest. "She was my best friend too, and I never suspected she was capable of this." Vincent portrayed himself as another victim of Natalia's deception, someone who needed Victoria's support to heal from the betrayal. Victoria's gradual turn against Natalia was heartbreaking to witness. She stopped visiting during the trial, stopped answering Natalia's desperate letters from jail, and eventually changed her phone number to avoid the collect calls from prison. The ultimate betrayal came 18 months after Natalia's conviction. Vincent and Victoria announced their engagement in the same local newspaper that had once featured Vincent and Natalia as the perfect couple. They married in a quiet ceremony at the same church where Vincent had promised to love and protect Natalia forever. But even the most perfect crimes have one weakness: time. Federal Correctional Institution Danbury became Natalia's world. Concrete walls, metal bars, and the constant noise of women who'd lost everything to bad choices or worse circumstances. She worked in the prison library, helping other inmates earn their GEDs, never letting go of her dream to prove her innocence. Every appeal was rejected. Every lawyer she wrote to declined her case, but Natalia refused to accept that her life was over. While she folded laundry for 23 cents an hour, Vincent and Victoria lived in their renovated colonial home, hosting dinner parties where guests praised Vincent's business acumen for saving the family company after his wife's devastating betrayal. Brennan Auto Parts had indeed recovered under their management, mostly because Vincent had stopped stealing from it and started using Natalia's supposed theft as a tax write-off and insurance claim. Victoria wore Natalia's jewelry to charity galas, drove Natalia's Honda Civic to the grocery store, and even adopted the rescue dog that Natalia had been training before her arrest. They'd built their perfect life on the foundation of Natalia's destroyed one, sleeping peacefully in the bed where Vincent had once planned his wife's downfall. Every Mother's Day, Vincent would place flowers on his mother's grave and whisper about how much he missed having Natalia there to comfort him. The performance was flawless, the community's sympathy was genuine, and their secret remained buried beneath 10 years of carefully maintained lies. FBI Special Agent Marcus Chen wasn't looking for Vincent Brennan when his task force raided the underground poker operation in Cleveland's warehouse district. The investigation targeted money laundering through illegal gambling rings, and Chen's team had spent 18 months tracking digital payments between offshore accounts and underground casinos across Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Computer seizures from the raid revealed communications dating back 12 years, messages, payment records, and betting histories that painted a detailed picture of high-stakes gambling addiction. Vincent's phone number appeared in thousands of text exchanges with bookmakers. His credit card funded regular transactions with illegal betting sites, and security footage from 17 different casinos showed him losing spectacular amounts of money during the exact time period when funds disappeared from Brennan Auto Parts. Digital forensics expert Sarah Martinez made the connection while analyzing timestamps on financial transactions. Vincent's gambling losses correlated perfectly with money stolen from his family business, but the evidence trail had been expertly redirected to implicate his wife. Martinez discovered remote access software on devices linked to Vincent's IP address, showing he'd controlled Natalia's computer from multiple locations during her night shifts at the hospital. The planted evidence was sophisticated but not perfect. Email headers revealed the fake accounts had been created from Vincent's home network. Bank security footage showed him entering branches where fraudulent documents were submitted. Most damaging of all, casino loyalty cards in Natalia's name had been activated using Vincent's personal email address, a detail he'd forgotten to cover during his 3-month framing campaign. Agent Chen realized they'd stumbled onto something much bigger than illegal gambling. They'd found evidence of one of the most elaborate frame-ups in white-collar crime history. It took 10 years for the truth to come out, 10 years you don't have. Subscribe now so you learn the warning signs before your life is stolen. Vincent's gambling addiction had cost him $437,000 over 3 years, not the $300,000 he'd stolen from the family business. The additional losses came from personal credit cards, home equity loans, and borrowing against his life insurance policy. His desperation hadn't been about covering one theft, but about feeding an addiction that had consumed his entire financial life. The frame-up's sophistication shocked even seasoned investigators. Vincent had spent months studying financial forensics, learning how digital evidence is traced, understanding banking security protocols, and researching successful white-collar prosecutions to ensure his wife would be convicted. Every detail had been meticulously planned to withstand scrutiny. Natalia's exoneration was swift once the truth emerged. Federal prosecutors dropped all charges, the state issued a formal apology, and she walked out of Danbury Federal Correctional Institution on a Tuesday morning in March, carrying the same small bag she'd packed 10 years earlier. How does it feel to lose 10 years of your life to someone else's lies? Vincent and Victoria disappeared 3 days before federal agents arrived with arrest warrants. Their bank accounts had been systematically emptied, their home sold to a cash buyer who never saw the property, and their passports were used to board a flight to Rio de Janeiro just hours before the manhunt began. They'd liquidated $2 million in assets and vanished into South America's financial underground, leaving behind only a note apologizing to Vincent's elderly parents for the shame they'd brought upon the family name. Justice delayed, but not denied. Natalia stepped into freedom at 40, her youth stolen by a decade of lies. Her career was gone, her reputation shattered, yet she faced the world with quiet resolve. The years could not be reclaimed, but her determination to rebuild proved stronger than the destruction Vincent had left behind. What would you do in Natalia's situation? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? What life lesson do you take from this story? If you still won't subscribe after hearing this story, go to the comments right now and explain why you're comfortable being unprepared when betrayal comes for you.